Okay, I think we can start. I just discovered something. I discovered that I still have my old Bell Labs title, and I left Bell Labs 10 years ago or something like that. So the slides have been changing a lot. You'll see they are very different. Okay, so let's talk about invention. Marconi invented the radio in 1894. Okay, and broadcasting, the idea, Marconi's radio actually developed in Long Island, really. Marconi's radio was a one-to-one communication device. So it was wireless, one-to-one communication device. And then someone had this idea of doing it one-to-many, and that became broadcasting. And it started in 1920. But the idea of advertising came in 1922. And that's really very interesting because you see, passing the time, there was an invention, there was expansion of the idea of the invention, and still not very useful until people found the business application. And you guys don't do a lot of radio these days, but radio was an incredible thing in technology. Second World War, everyone sitting around the radio listening to what happened. Okay, very, very important in the development of the United States. So, first comment here, technology is developed typically for a particular purpose. And this is the most important insight. Ensuing users far outweigh the original intent. Just make you think a little bit, and I don't know the answer either. What was Chat GPT developed for? Kind of a modified search engine, correct? A little bit. It's like search engines progressively know quite a lot. Try to ask questions to Google, you get a lot of good answers. However, Chat GPT is a much wider type of search engine. But the most important thing in Chat GPT is its vernacular capability, the capability to talk to you and you talk to it. And that's the big difference, because the big difference is before, to talk to a computer, you have to know Python. Okay, now you'll be talking to it through some kind of GPT interface. Now, I want you to think about this and give me an idea. What are the ensuing uses of this thing that talks to you and you can talk to it? Actually, the point I wanted to make with this slide, which I used for many years, is that first you develop something for some purpose and it does some other things. And in order to catch on, you need a business model. And I don't know if that's what I always have been saying for decades, but I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question about ChatGPT here, is what is the purpose? And I think it was developed basically to create a verbal interface, one way or the other. And I sent you an interesting article. By the way, guys, send articles to everyone if you find interesting technology. We have just use my email, and that is the address of the Google groups we have there. But what I sent you is an article published in '97 by a Google research group. And that was basically the beginning of generative technology. So Google developed it. Now I have a question for you. Why isn't Google the owner of Chat GPT? Now, ex post facto, Chat GPT came out in 2 years ago in November. Why? Meaning, Google invented it. Google scientists, not one scientist, 20 or 50, whatever. So they were afraid to take the bang out of the product. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I think that I don't exactly, obviously we don't know the answer, but is first, the purpose of that thing wasn't totally clear for them. Second, they had an established product that was good. And you'll see several examples here of companies that led the world with their technology and then vanished away. And I'm going to have a counterexample. And so I think the major reason why Google is not the leader is because they ran into this problem of racial bias and sexual bias and etc. And they were afraid of the litigation out of it. And the other part of it is they had a very successful product and they were afraid that this thing would take the bang away from Google. Now, as I said last class, today, if you don't have a generative interface in your software, it will be very difficult to survive. So everyone is being pushed. Continuing, okay, so point. You have a technology, you use it for a certain thing. If it's a good technology, you'll finish up serving other things more importantly. And these other things are going to be more important than what you thought. Technology facilitates creating, the business model creates real use. So that's real point. You need a business model. Different business models may create different types of products. And this is the important message. Technology and business model are different things and both require creativity. And I would expect you guys that are not technologists to develop the business models. And the business model doesn't have to be a huge thing, it can be just a little sliver that will make you millionaire, maybe billionaire. Okay, now, the thing that this technology, when it was developed, wasn't really thought through is that it's going to change most professions. And this is going to be, in your lifetime, is going to be probably over the next 5 to 10 years. This is happening very, very fast. And there are a whole set of examples of technologies that were great and they had a bad business model. I'm going to just go through this example. Alexander Graham Bell developed the telephony. And basically, it tried to sell it to Western Union. I showed you that comment on Western Union. The first slide I showed you last week, the first two, talked about, this is kind of a bad idea, or it's a good idea in certain cases, etc. And they basically rejected telephony. And what happened to Western Union? They went pretty much out of business. They just a wiring company. They were one of the largest companies in the world. And what actually happened is that little companies picked up the technology and serviced local areas. So you would talk with your neighbors, you would talk to the neighbors, etc. And there is a rule, scientific rule or whatever you call it, whereby the usefulness of telecommunication is proportional to the square of number of users. So if you have one user, the usefulness is 1. If you have 10 users, the usefulness is 100, and goes on. If you have 1,000 users, the usefulness is 1,000,000. And so what was started to happen, there were these many little telephone companies, because the product was a compelling product. The ability to talk to a friend or to your neighbor, very powerful type of thing. Today, you take it for granted, but think about it. You didn't have to walk to the neighbor. You didn't have to wait until you met the neighbor, pick up your telephone, and your kids and whatever. Very powerful. So all these little companies started developing, and what was happening, the big companies, remember, larger the number of communication, the usefulness is proportional to the square. What was happening is the big companies were eating the small companies. And so what actually happened, the government came in very wisely. You always think the government intervention is a bad thing, was a good thing, and created a monopoly. And basically, but protected the small companies. So everywhere they created this protocol, which is with the telephone number, 3 digits, area code, 7 digits, the telephone number, and everyone put their telephones in that format and they could interface. Very powerful decision by the US government, very well done, and created a tremendous development in the United States. And you think telephony, great, I can talk to my girlfriend with my boyfriend or whatever. No, it's incredibly powerful in economic development, meaning major use of telephone became business. And it's was very interesting, very well done. And in 1984, there was litigation, and the antitrust department went against AT&T for monopoly. And AT&T split up into long-distance company, AT&T, and 7 operating companies, Verizon, Bell South, etc., etc. And so the government created the monopoly, then the government cut the monopoly up. And what actually happened that the US leadership in the world in telephony went down, not up. Very bad decision, not allowing the monopoly on that particular thing. The other thing that I am particularly interested on is, or affected, is that one of the things that AT&T monopoly had was Bell Labs. Bell Labs have 20,000 employees, of which 8,000 had PhDs. And as I said last week, a lot of the developments you have that you're using came from Bell Labs' original patents. And by the way, because Bell Labs was paid by public fare, meaning there was a little ad in the telephone bills to pay for Bell Labs, the patents were not proprietary. What does that mean? Anyone could use the patents. And it was terrible with what happened is the US leadership in a lot of technologies appeared because this colossal technology group was progressively emasculated. And of course, I'm a little bit biased because I was there for so many years and I liked it. Okay, now, interesting story. Do you use fax today? Because other technologies provide that too. But you know, if you go around, people still have fax machines. Stores have fax machines. They established a method, they stayed with it. It's very unpractical, etc. There is a thing called eFax, which is like a fax simulation using internet, etc. But a very interesting a technology that came in was everywhere, and then just basically disappeared. Now, instant photography is an even more interesting story. Have you ever heard the word Polaroid? What actually happened is that these guys developed, this guy, Ed Land, developed this methodology. And, you know, taking pictures was very clumsy. Okay, you would get a film, put a film in the camera, take a picture, then take the film out, take it to a store. They would put it in a chemical bath and created the negatives, and you all see negatives, correct? Although you don't use it. Okay. And then you kind of printed images out of that. That was very, very powerful. And then this guy, Ed Ladd, came out with this silver coating type of thing that you could take a picture and in a minute you would have outcome. So that was extremely powerful and very rapidly grew Polaroid. And what happened is that Kodak, who dominated the photography business, after a while decided, well, that's not such a bad idea. They created their own Polaroid type film. Well, Polaroid went to court and showed that they have violated all these patents. And so what happened to Kodak is they were basically forbidden forever to do instant photography in the courts. And Kodak finished up going bankrupt. Okay. And so what is the storytelling? The storytelling is that established companies that have a good business don't want innovation. And then you have to think about Microsoft and seeing how well they have done with innovation. But for a while, under Bill Gates, they were starting to go down, and they had got a new CEO who basically expanded their horizons. So that has been a very interesting story, interesting question, what's going to happen? Now, they have all kinds of stories about video telepresence, and a lot of initiatives started and didn't do very well until the device, the phone, showed up. And that made a very big difference. And now, the other thing is the internet telephony story, which is a very interesting story, was the argument about let's create the internet not by wires in the ground, but by satellites. And a couple of companies were created, French company, American company, etc. And they kind of basically went bankrupt. The government, the US government, bought the American company and used it for military purposes, and satellites out there. But what has happened since then is that putting a satellite in orbit became much cheaper, meaning by a factor of 100. And you can send one rocket up with 20 satellites. And so, you have the Elon Musk satellite company there, which is the basis for many different things, including what happened in the war in Ukraine. What's happening now, they're basically basing a lot of the weaponry and identification by that satellite network. So it's very interesting how you see the change on what's happening in technologies. Still, those basics are there. The basics are you develop technology for a purpose, and then you do other things with that. And so what here I just talk about technologies come in, come out, come in, come out. And I want you to think about this. Particularly this idea of metaverse. That was the hottest technology idea. What happened? Facebook changed their name to Meta. And I have some videos I kind of struck by lack of time here because we want to do other things, but I'm going to finish up showing you some. And it's like 7 clips of Facebook advertising the metaverse, and they could never manage to make it profit. Okay, but Facebook is not doing very badly, correct? They are one of the largest companies in the world because they did other things too. But what is this idea of the metaverse?
being each other's presence without actually being there?
Yeah, it's a virtual presence kind of thing. And, you know, I would love to have the learning pod. And the learning pod would be like a little telephone cabin. You don't know what telephone cabins are, you haven't seen them, but a little thing that you are at home and you are here. So you could look right and see Isabel, you could left, see him, etc. And you could talk and you get the same feeling. Is that possible or this is stupid? My guess is the metaverse will be part of your lives pretty soon. And it might be called something different, etc. But will be this world of exchangeable physical and meta presence, and will be facilitated by generative technology. So will be this kind of augmented reality environment whereby my best example of augmented reality is football game. You go to a football game, you put these glasses of augmented reality, and when a guy is running, you know who the guy is, what his percentages, maybe the name of his wife, just joking, etc., etc. And it's basically augmented reality is a way to integrate your cognition to enhance the world. So I want to answer my own question that I asked before, and I have a reason for that. Why didn't Google come up with generative technology before OpenAI? Because they had too much risk with their existing products. Same story we have here with telephone and etc., etc. Established companies don't like to shake their empire. Okay, stay with that because we are going to come back to this. Okay, this is an old book. He died about 5 years ago, Clayton Christensen. He was a professor at Harvard, and a very, very interesting set of things. And he always talked about two types of technology: sustaining technology and disruptive technology. And his theory, which maybe should be changed now, was that established companies don't want to destroy their empire. And so they don't adopt these new disruptive technologies. And these new disruptive technologies start very quietly and then explode into their markets. And that's clearly what happened in telephony and in several other things. It's difficult to imagine Google disappearing. And I have a slide that shows the businesses that Google has. And when I talk about data brokers, I show all the ways they collect your data. Okay, and we are going to talk about that, etc. So I don't think they're going to stop. But this is an interesting picture of the traditional world, whereby if you are AT&T, if you are Western Union, if you are a Kodak, you really don't want this new technology because you're making money. You're doing well. And the question is, what's going to happen next? And are you going to stay around? One more thing. The cycles are much shorter now. We are not talking about 20 years. We are talking about 5 years or 3 years. Okay. And I like this slide a lot. I met these guys from when I was in France. I met these guys from Xerox PARC. And Xerox PARC was basically a research center like the Bell Labs, but of Xerox. And Xerox is another example of company that was the dominant in technology and basically disappeared. Okay, because they had this, stayed with the sustainable model, not with the disruptive model. But what this shows is like graphical user interface, Windows, mouse, laser, Ethernet. desktop publishing, word processing, bid market. They developed it. They were the first in all of this. And look at this. Who were the dominant company 10 years ago with it? The only one they controlled to a certain degree, actually none of them they controlled, so they had a reasonable good presence in the laser printer for a while. But so it's not only developing the technology, and this is the story now of Google. Google developed the generative technology, but they are not the leaders of the technology. So this is Christensen's thing, sustaining technology, disruptive technologies, and this still will work very well until what we're now seeing happening at Microsoft. Okay, and these are all examples of technologies and history and what happened. New markets, the years, Kodak and Bell Telephone, Kodak, etc., 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 and the evolution of technology. Now, I'm going to go through this. I have too many slides here. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this. We think about eBay. Maybe you don't think anymore, but eBay was a very big development in the web environment. Talk about Amazon, we talk about Google. The thing you don't think is that there are a lot of business under it, belonging to someone else using that technology. And actually, when you think that eBay is big or Amazon is big, if you look at the derivative businesses, it's much bigger. And when you have a new technology like generative, you are going to have hundreds of businesses doing it. You are going to be affected by the accounting side of this. You know, how it's going to affect the accounting business. But it will be affecting every other business, yes. Well, Amazon basically sells you stuff. And there are hundreds of companies that use the platform for their own purpose. I went skiing about 5 years ago, and they actually, to buy the tickets, they use the Amazon platform. Okay, and there are hundreds of these. And you see this in the development of technologies, all these derivative businesses out of a major technology. So what do you expect? Derivative business out of generative technology. And question when? Now, I just want to kind of come back to this. And I have kind of, I'm going to ask Arian sometime to come and talk about this. And this idea, I mentioned it last time, these things are all interlinked. So I mention them on a regular basis. This idea, what did I mention data brokers? Can you put your name in front of you? I don't know your name. And maybe pay a little bit of attention instead of playing with your computer, because I think you might learn something. When you start, what did I say last time? I said, forget about privacy, it's gone. And don't worry too much, you're not very interesting. Now, the business of data brokerage is a derivative of big data. And basically, you can go on the internet and find tens of these data brokers. And what I want you to do is every time you accept an app or you start using a service, and they ask you, can I collect cookies? I'm not saying you should not take the cookies. I'm just saying, remember what they are doing. What are they doing? collecting your information, okay? And then the question is what information they're collecting, and do you care? And it's very easy to break your world in I care and I don't care and I don't care. But it's much more nuanced than that, because there are certain types of information that you probably don't want them to have, and there are many types of information that you don't care. And it's very difficult to determine. So I asked this question, is Chat GPT Search? And what is the answer to that? Now everyone is talking about research studies comparing Claude with Gemini and etc. And I think we're going to develop a whole set of specialized tools for certain things. And the ones that find that's sub-industry of GPT, an industry for searching research articles will be enhanced Google Scholar. Google Scholar is where you find literature. And I think we'll go with a lot of these specializations. And hopefully, again, the tailored type of databases is what really going to classify things and make them terribly useful. I have a lot of examples here. I don't want to think. Now, this is 2022, Forbes top 10 technologies. Computing power is exploding. Devices are getting smarter. They talk a lot about quantum computing that's supposed to give you exponential larger computing power. Has been very slow. We have one of our PhD students that looks a lot into it, and he hasn't showed too many results. Datification, basically everything becomes data. And now look what the AI is, number 5. This is 2022. What would happen today with the AI number 1? Because AI is everything what people talk. Okay, now look at this one here. Everyone knows what 3D printing is, correct? You do? Yes? No, 3D printing is actually you have a plan, a map or a design, and you give it to the computer and it builds it for you. So it's like it has ink that is like accumulates. So you can, for example, applications that are emerging very rapidly is car parts. So you don't have to go to Chevrolet to get your car part. You get the design of the part and print it. Okay, and so this is a technology that's developing reasonably slowly, but it's going to be very, very useful, very, very important technology. But you know, some technologies can, you know, the digital technologies expand very rapidly. When you need a supply chain, you need devices, etc., it slows things down. 3D printing is going to be very, very useful. And I imagine that there'll be a time that many people will have a 3D printer at home. And their prices have gone down dramatically. And depending what you do, that might be very interesting. This whole area of genomics, whereby you're looking at your genes and their composition, is a very big technology, but will be very specialized into the medical type of arenas. Okay, and this is what I was saying before. Western Union led communication. AT&T took it over. Now AT&T doesn't really lead communication anymore. IBM, I have a book by Catherine Fishman, and it talks about IBM and the 7 dwarfs. And it basically said that IBM was larger than the 7 next competitors together. Okay, and look at IBM today, kind of second echelon company. Microsoft is the different story. Microsoft actually managed to pull itself up. Let's see if it continues. Okay, and so these were the top 10 companies: Apple, Microsoft, Aramco. Aramco is oil company, Saudi Arabia. The other ones, Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, were all electronic companies. These are more traditional companies. NVIDIA was number 8. And you know TSMC? That's a Taiwan manufacturer of chips. And interesting, they don't really develop their chip designs. They might have that too, but they really are builders, physical builders. And they are surprisingly a physical company. They've done very well. But I pulled, this is 2022 May. I pulled it today, June 10, 2024. Compare Apple, Microsoft, Aramco, Alphabet, Amazon. Look at that. Microsoft, Apple, and actually NVIDIA, there was moments that was more valuable than Apple. Number 2. Today, I guess number 3. But look at the nature of these companies. This one here does physical goods, but these 3 don't. And it will be a while before this kind of thing. And look at the other ones. Meta is here, and by the way, they will be probably going up a little bit. And Berkshire Hathaway was number 2 in the world. This is an article out of the Washington Post in about a year ago. Okay, and they basically were digging inside the secret list of websites that make AI like Chat GPT sound smart. And what they did is they didn't get Chat GPT. What they did is they had another piece of software that was a large language model, and they could kind of dissect what information it had. And then here they have this conversation about chatbot, and many people don't even think as ChatGPT as a chatbot. But it's kind of a conversational thing. They can talk to you, and you can talk to it. So it's okay to call it a chatbot. AI chatbot exploded popularity over the past 4 months, stunning the public with their awesome abilities. Chatbot cannot think like humans. They do not actually understand what they say. Is that true? Like most companies, Google heavily filtered the data before feeding into AI. Why? Because they were worried about the litigation against their very profitable Google product. And if you remember, we talked a little bit last time, base products don't necessarily are the profitable things today. Today, you use the base product to capture information about someone. And then I talked about examples of base product picking up information for you. Google doesn't charge anything. So they don't make money out of Google search directly. But where do they make their money? Advertising. Basically, so it's a secondary usage of their information. It's not about what they do. And companies like Amazon is finding out that they can do that. Okay, I just want to read you this here. In addition to removing gibberish and duplicate text, the company used the open source list, the list of dirty, naughty, obscene, and otherwise bad words, which included 402 terms in English and 1 emoji. Companies typically use high-quality data to fine-tune models to avoid this content. Isn't that a reasonable explanation why Google had the leading technology in the world and didn't create? Because they were afraid of this. It's exactly the story that I was telling you about sustainable technology and breakthrough technology. They had this product creating a lot of profit for them, and this other thing came in that will disrupt them. No question about it. And what they are doing, Google has probably arguably the most sophisticated research core. I mean, they really have a very good research team with the best scientists. And of course, they are being constrained because they have a very profitable product in mind. I want to remind you something of last week. Sam Altman, remember Sam Altman, head of OpenAI? I'm going to show you a video of him talking in Davos this year. But Sam Altman was kicked out of OpenAI. Why would they do that? Because the board and Sam Altman were not agreeing. And Sam Altman actually, in addition to doing OpenAI, he was starting all the small businesses, derivative businesses, and to enrich his own pocket or some other reason, etc. So they kicked him out. The board kicked him out. You heard this story. The question, what happened after is, and by the way, Microsoft had invested by that time something like $11 billion in computing power and in gathering data and in creating data for Chat GPT. So they gave a lot of money to OpenAI. Now, Sam Altman was kind of fiddling in his side businesses, etc., was kicked out. 700 of the 750 employees of OpenAI signed a letter because Sam Altman, after 3 or 4 days of being kicked out, basically said he was moving to Microsoft. Now, at that time, the estimated valuation of OpenAI was something like $70 billion, or $60 billion valuations, I think. 700 of the employees signed a letter saying that if Sam left, they would go with him to Microsoft. So the board basically was fired, and some other people came in. And why did they sign? Because they love Sam Altman? Of course, yeah. Meaning they would get a percentage of the $80 billion. Okay, because they all had stock options. That's how they get paid. They don't get big salaries. Now, if Sam Altman left to Microsoft, maybe the value of OpenAI would basically disappear, or certainly be reduced very dramatically. So they didn't want Sam to leave, because if they left and Sam left, OpenAI would be nothing. And those $70 billion would disappear. Now divide $70 billion by 1,000, 750 employees, you finish up with a lot of money. 80 billion, 8 billion, 800 million. Not too bad, correct? Would you mind getting 100 million? No. But so obviously, it wasn't only pure love. I think some of them really liked. And very interesting, couple of the chief scientists actually signed against Sam Altman, and then he changed his mind because he realized that his $1 billion would go somewhere else. Very, very interesting. Okay, now continuing here. So this is basically the story of why Google not immediately created a tool like that. Why this kind of blocker is intended to limit model exposure to racial slow obscenities, as it pertains, also have been shown to eliminate some non-sexual LGBT content. As prior research has shown, a lot gets past the filter. Now, swastikas, there are a lot of examples about this. Now, meaning we can discuss this to the tilt, but have to understand there are facts and there are lies. But there are a lot of things in the middle. Lot of things in the middle, and that's the difficulty. You can filter as much as you want, okay? But maybe a political example here. President Trump says there has been fraud in the elections. Most courts say there have been not fraud in the election. But the truth is in the middle. There has no question with millions and millions of voters, there was some fraud. No question. But most courts thought that the fraud was very small, didn't matter. And that's just an example. There are many other examples where it's very easy to think truth is truth. It's actually range. And that's what the problem with a lot of this filtering is nearly impossible to create. You can create a filtering based on your opinions. This is bad, that's bad. But not on a large public domain. So that's really what we need to think about. And I'm going to continue this. I just want you have these slides. I just want you to, before next time, look at this. Okay, the largest component of this LLM that they examined was the patents office, 0.5%. The second one was Wikipedia. The third one was, which I don't know what it is. The fourth one was New York Times. New York Times is suing OpenAI for using the New York Times as information. Because you think about this very carefully, things like Wikipedia and New York Times could literally disappear if these engines put their content in there. And look forward 5 years, there'll be tremendous restrictions of what content can be used. Look at this one here. We are very interested on Coursera. Okay, we just had our first, between last class and this class, our first ethics in AI course has been officialized in Coursera. Now, if the content of Coursera goes all into generative technology, Coursera will disappear. So this is something waiting for change. I wanted you guys to learn a little bit about crypto. Crypto is a very important technology, and we'll have a chance to do a little bit more technology on blockchain.